Thank you, everyone. Could I call this meeting to order, please? I'd like to welcome you all to this Finance and Corporate meeting this Tuesday, the 30th of July. And thank you for breaking into your much needed short break, but it's been good. So I asked Dale Marie, could you open your karakia, please?
Tēnā tātou I te whare, nau mai hoki mai ki tēnei whare muri a tātou wā whakatā, mana wātia matariki. Tākiri mai te ata, ura te ata, kāke te ata, uru mai te ao o te tangata, ki ana rerenga, ki tōna kaua, tēnei te ao. Ao mārama, I rongo whakairia, hui e, tāi ki e. Tēnā tātou.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Now, we have apologies from Councillor Lou Brown and Councillor Andrew Brown. And Liz, can you hear us? All's good, and I hope things are well where you are, or get better anyway. Roger, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I've got my video turned off just to kind of ensure that I still get the internet going. So yes, I can hear you, and you can hear me. Good.
Okay, could someone move and second it? Councillor Coles, Councillor St Pierre seconded. All in favour, please say aye. Thank you, carried. Now, we've got one substantive item, and that's the representation. Oh, no, let's go back. Disclosure of members' interests. Is anyone? As one councillor years ago said, we are all interested. So yeah, so there's nothing to report there. So one substantive item today is the representation review 2024 and the adoption of the initial proposal. Now we have Stephen Hill presenting. Welcome, Stephen. It's nice to see you again. I thought, is Diana here? It doesn't matter. Oh, thank you, Diana, for anything that's tricky. So, Stephen, I'll leave it over to you to put your report. Do you want questions held back to the end of your report? Which way do you want it done?
Mr. Chair, if you like, I'm happy just to very briefly for a few minutes step through the report, just pull out a few key points and highlights, and then happy to ask questions at that point if there's any technical issues. And I'll
good as gold. Thank you.
Clarify those.
The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillors, good to be with you again. And I'm happy to be standing in for Joe, who's away at the moment to bring the report to you. So the report that you have in front of you today and the recommendations build on the work that you've done over the last couple of months to look at the issue of representation review and bring to you a proposal that's based on where we landed at the last meeting in terms of the options. But you have essentially two options in front of you today, and one is to proceed with the representation review on the basis of the proposal as it's outlined in the recommendations, but there is also the option to not proceed with the representation review as it's not specifically required at this stage. So that's where we want to get to at the end of the day, and if the proposal goes forward, we trigger then some statutory steps of public consultation, hearings and deliberations, and a final proposal a little bit further down the track. I'll just take you through, I guess, some of the key points to set the scene for the discussion today. And first of all, I guess, just looking at some of the background to the proposal that's here. The council did a representation review in 2018 and also did one in 2021. So you are not specifically required to do a representation review at this time. Your next statutory requirement to do a representation review would be for the 2027 period, but councils have the option of undertaking a representation review at any time, and that's the discussion that's on the table for you now. This has been triggered, I guess, by some of the discussions you have been having as elected members around the table about some of the options for changing the way the council is structured and the impact that might have in terms of the effectiveness of council decision making, and that's the discussion that I guess you'll be focusing on today. So the current arrangements were put in place in 2021 following that representation review. At that stage, you reduced the number of councillors from 13 down to 11, being 10 from general wards and 1 from the Māori ward. as you'll recall, that decision was referred to the Local Government Commission, who made a determination and endorsed the proposal that's in place now. And we've referred to some of the comments that the Local Government Commission made in its determination earlier in our discussions. So as we've gone through this process, you'll recall we've looked at the key legislative requirements, the statutory requirements and the principles in the Act. And those are communities of interest in particular, identifying the communities of interest across the district, and then how to effectively and fairly represent those communities of interest. And so the proposal that's before you today is essentially where we landed as the most effective way and the fairest way under this discussion to represent those communities of interest. We refer to the Māori ward and note that the Māori ward was previously established in the prior cycle, and that's not subject to consultation in this particular process because that sits outside the scope of the statutory requirements of the representation review. But we do note that there is a bill currently going through Parliament which changes the way that decisions would be made on Māori wards, and you'll be aware of that discussion. The bill has passed committee stage last week. I understand it will be up for third reading today. So it looks like it's very close to being passed, but is not passed yet and not enacted yet. But once it is enacted, we understand as it stands at the moment, thanks to a late amendment, all councils that have previously established Māori wards will be required to actively make a decision on whether to rescind their decision to establish Māori wards or to go to a poll at the 2025 election. Now, that's a decision that you will need to make before the 6th of September. It's quite a tight time frame, but you can't make any decision on that until the bill is enacted. And so that is not on the table for discussion today, but a paper will be coming to the council in due course for you to make some discussion and decisions around that. So that is an important issue, but outside the scope of this review and this discussion right now. So just refreshing your minds about some of the discussion that we have had. We looked at the communities of interest and confirmed that the major communities of interest across the district were those based around Cambridge and Te Awamutu, and the rural areas around those townships as well. We looked at effective representation and how we might best effectively represent those. And so there's been discussion about the structure of rural wards, whether a single or two rural wards would provide effective representation. And so the proposal that you have before you today looks at a different way of structuring that part of the community of interest. We undertook a pre-engagement survey from late May through to the middle of June to get some community feedback on the questions that are being asked around this review. And you've had a good presentation around the findings of that pre-engagement survey. It was a short survey, and with the limited time, the number of responses was not large, but useful in terms of providing a snapshot of some of the community opinion that's out there. Generally, people felt there was a sort of a split between people feeling that whether they were well represented or not. And again, not a clear, overwhelming view of preference for any one particular structure or another. So following that survey, we came back to you with a range of options for the ward structure, and we did some analysis on those. We also looked back at some of the options that had been considered last time around, and they were on the table again. And we noted that by and large, they did not meet the requirements for fair representation, but the proposal that's on the table today does. And so that's the one that does seem to tick the boxes of fair representation and effective representation. There was some discussion around the basis of election, whether it should be by wards or at large, and the view was to remain with the wards-based system as the one that would provide the most effective representation. So the option that you landed on following those discussions, which is in the initial proposal today, is to reduce the number of councillors from 11 to 8, being 7 from general wards and 1 from the Māori ward, and combining the rural wards of Parongia and Kakipuku and Maungatautari, and reducing the combined rural representation by 1 councillor. The question of community boards was also on the table. Again, by and large, the view was not to make a major change to community boards, but there is a realignment of boundaries, which matches the realignment of the Cambridge ward boundary that's proposed in this proposal, which is simply to bring in a part of the area around Karapiro to ensure that the Cambridge ward meets the requirements for population per member ratio. So the numbers needed to be slightly adjusted, and it brings in an area that kind of makes sense to incorporate into the Cambridge ward. So the community boards essentially in this proposal are not substantively changed other than that minor boundary adjustment. So the status quo is proposed. So those are the options that are on the table to proceed forward with this representation review. If the representation review does, or the proposal does go forward, that will trigger a period of public consultation. We're proposing that will be from the 5th of August to the 5th of September. There's a minimum of 1 month that period has to be open for. Council will hear any submissions of those who wish to be heard and deliberate on those hearings. That's scheduled at this stage for 25th of September, and the council will then adopt its final proposal on the 15th of October. That stage, the final proposal is open to appeals and objections, so it doesn't go out for public consultation, but it is open for appeals. Appeals can be made by anybody who submitted on the initial proposal, and objections can be made by anybody if the final proposal is different from the initial proposal. So if you make changes to the initial proposal for the final proposal, then it's also open to objections. So it's a quick overview, thumbnail of the discussion that we've had so far and where we've landed today. So I'm happy to answer any questions at this stage.
Thank you, Stephen. Who would like to? Claire, you can lead off.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. The question, I have 2 questions. The first is the rural wards. So yeah, I'm a bit disappointed that the option that's preferred is that the rural wards are combined. Yeah, and so I just want to understand why it was impossible not to maintain 2 separate rural wards, one from the east, one from the west. And the other question I had was around the Karapiro boundary changes, because I was thinking, given the number of people that might be in that village, and it's possible to have rural villages within a rural ward, was it considered of actually moving those people into the Maungatautari ward, make it a bit easier to get the numbers up, for the Maungatautari ward or something. Yeah, so those are the 2 questions I had. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. And both of those issues are essentially around the fair representation and population per member ratio, that in order to meet those requirements, some adjustments are needed. Keep in mind that effectively the status quo is a true rural ward option. So in a sense, that option is on the table by retaining the status quo. And the issue around Karapiro again is really just in order to make this structure work with the Cambridge ward, there needed to be a change in the numbers. We were hoping to try and find what the number of population that was affected, and Ken, happy to.
Yeah. Yes, and Stephen, we have just got that answer through for you, Claire, and in fact I've just emailed it to you. But there were 78 properties affected by that proposed boundary change at Karapiro, and that equated to 190 electors, 190 electors in those 78 properties.
Yeah, so I guess that probably wouldn't be enough to tip the balance for if they were able to be all in the Maungatautari ward. instead of going into Cambridge? Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, we've got it in our papers, the numbers. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah. So I guess that you were just thinking about, yeah, the ways to, yeah, juggle things so that you could get something that would be suitable. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Anyone else want to? Monty?
Just clarification on the appeals and objections. They are all to the commission.
That the council receives them, but essentially we forward them on to the Local Government Commission, and the Local Government Commission holds a hearing and to determine the outcome and make its determination. So it's a Local Government Commission process. We receive them, forward them on to the commission if any are received.
Stephen, just one from me. Do you see, I suppose, your crystal ball gazing that the past voting statistics in the rural wards, the West has a big domination, that there could be one part of the East is not represented at all, so that the West councillors as is now would have to head around that way. So it doesn't seem fair to me that, do you see that as being a problem, or that's in the future, isn't it?
It is in the future, and I'm sorry I didn't bring my crystal ball with me either. So I guess it's one of those issues that every council sets up a structure that it thinks will work best and most effectively. But at the end of the day, you don't know how that necessarily will translate in the electoral process in terms of candidates and voting. But it's about setting the foundation for good representation as best you're able to. And I guess that's where we've landed today.
Roger, you wanted to say something?
Yes, thank you. Am I coming over all right?
Yes, clear, loud and
Yes,
clear.
excellent. Yeah, I've got a question about the population stats that we used for the different ward populations. We used the estimate from NZ Stats that were given to us and used by Infometrics, and we already know that the new census stats that we've got coming through are going to be about 2,500 population difference, in fact, less than the stats we're using. And we've got no idea where that 2,500 is going to occur. Does that not give us a risk that we could be actually adopting a ward representation structure that doesn't actually fairly represent the population distribution?
It certainly is the case that population distribution across the district might change when those the updated census stats become available. Unfortunately, all councils are required to use the June 2023 Stats NZ estimates. That's the baseline for all councils. And essentially, I guess it's, you set a baseline, you put a line in the sand, and that is the basis for the decision making. Of course, councils do have the option to review those again in a future representation review, but we have to work on these statistics that are in front of us. We can't speculate on what those changes might be, and we are required to use those the June 2023 estimates from Stats NZ.
Thank you. Monty, you?
My second...
Oh, sorry, Roger, you haven't finished?
Oh, sorry. If Mike
no,
wants to come in with a question on that particular issue before I go on with the second one.
Monty, you right?
I'm actually backing up to your question, Bruce. So if you'd rather go back to that or proceed with Roger, your call.
I'll let Monty go first. Roger, you can go after Monty finishes.
Yep.
Sorry,
that's
Roger.
fine.
This was just following on from Bruce's point that the voting patterns at the last election make it look like the West was voting more than the East in the rural wards. But no, but just probing this, it's a 2 councillor ward in the West rather than the East being a 1 councillor ward. So the numbers look twice as big, but it's actually what it looks like on the surface isn't indicating that it's West dominant, right?
Oh, right.
It's West dominant because twice as many people live in what we're calling the West Ward at the moment, the Prongia Kakapuku. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah. Thanks, Marty. Roger?
Yes, that was exactly my point as well, is the population that's indicated in the West rural and the East rural. There are approximately twice as many potential voters in the East as there are in Mangatautari. And so hence there is a likelihood that the allocation of, because my understanding is that the rural voters will each have 2 votes that they can allocate to whatever the list of candidates are. And the likelihood is that those people in that part of the electorate, their votes will have greater weight than the number of votes in the Mangatautari electorate, just from pure population figures.
That's something in the future, isn't it, again? Is anyone, what else?
Yeah, but it's a risk. It's a risk factor that we need to assess.
Yes, Susan?
Through you, I wouldn't say Madam Chair.
It could change.
And so used to
Councillor
saying
Peter.
Madam Chair. Look, I thank you for your extensive email and analysis, Roger. I think it's really thought-provoking and really interesting the way that you've unpacked some matters here. And I guess we have to be honest, and I think Stephen sort of touched on it before, there's no perfect system. There's no perfect like eureka moment where we're going to go, oh, this is absolutely 100% down to the wire, perfect representation. We know that because this is a fluid human community beast, right? So I guess what the challenge for us today is to ask ourselves whether we're comfortable with asking our communities to analyze us and say whether, can you do this better? Is there a better system? Is there a better way? Is there a better size? It's not a case of us, I think, today analysing whether there's going to be greater weight here or greater weight there. I think the question today is whether we ask our communities what their thoughts are. And I think it would be remiss of us to cut that off because, frankly, we've got to be prepared to analyse ourselves. We're pretty quick to sort of say, you know, there needs to be potentially organisational change or we need change here and this needs to change. But we've got to look at ourselves as well. And that was my challenge to us in this space. I accept that that there are shortcomings with the proposal. I'm quite open about that. But I would think that our community ought to have the say on whether they want this system, not us. That's sort of how I see it. And I think we could spend a lot of time being distracted by population and data and numbers and influence. And I kind of feel like that's, as much as it's interesting discussion, the nub of this is whether we want our communities to have this say. And for where I sit, I think we should be remiss of us to not let them. That's my 10 cents worth.
Thank you, Susan. Yeah, clear. Certainly no one else is queuing up.
Thanks. Yeah, so I am concerned about the change that it would bring for rural voters, I guess, because I was really hoping that east-west split could be retained because I do think they're different communities and we've heard that in the past. And I do think that there is a fundamental issue around the amount of people that live in those rural communities. And so I would be worried that the eastern side wouldn't get as good a representation it's got with the 2 wards. But I mean, Stephen said, okay, so that means we just say, well, the status quo, then you can vote for the status quo if we put it out for consultation. But I'm just worried that by putting out an alternative that we probably know there are shortcomings with it, is that going to mean our reputation is going to take a hit because people say, well, you knew that it wasn't really going to meet our needs, and yeah, so would it be better to wait? Yeah, so at the moment I'm sort of in the camp where I'm thinking it might be better to wait to get a bit more clarity with those changes that, you know, already been discussed today. Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Marcus.
Yeah, I'm probably feeling you as well, Claire, because just the rural ward thing, I think it doesn't quite sit quite right with me how it's set up. I think having 2 councillors to cover that diverse area, yeah, I'm not too sure. But the probably other thing I'm worried about as well is how much is this process going to cost us? Do the staff have time with our long-term plan commitments and things like that? And where is this budget coming from to do this bundle of work? Like, do we wait to 2027 and see if the coffers are a little bit better?
Thank you, Marcus. Mike, you have something? Sorry.
Yeah, so look, I believe a figure is quoted in the report, but I'm just trying to put my finger on it actually, sorry. Just give me one moment. Yeah, so look, on page 23 of the agenda, yeah, we mention a figure of $7,000. So the cost to complete this activity in the 24-25 financial year is approximately $7,000. The amount can be met within the, actually there's a typo there actually. This amount should say can be met within the existing budget when the costs will be incurred. So yeah, so look, we are comfortable with the costs that it can be met. Yeah, I mean workload is not ideal, but we've actually got through the bulk of the work. So yeah, you know, this is now framed up that it can go out to the public. So yes, there will be some further work obviously if submissions etc. come in. You know, there will be some comms stuff etc. in terms of promoting the consultative opportunity etc. But yeah, but look, the bulk of the work in terms of shaping this up has already been done. Yeah.
Thank you, Ken. Mike?
Thank you through the chair. Yes, a couple of comments. Where should we start? So the first bit of engagement, I guess we had that pre-engagement, that 59 people that responded. Yeah, I agree. It gives an indication, but it's sort of 59 responses is so minimal. I don't read too much into that. The other thing for me, this is a personal thing, is I'm weighing up, is this more about representation review, or is it actually more about the role of the elected members? And the conclusion I've come to, it's actually about the role of the elected members, rather than how many there are. That's sort of, to me, fundamentally what drove this, those initial conversations. And I think that's really important. Well, for me it is, because we go and consult with the community, whether it's an election or whether it's calling for submissions, there is, in fact, in both those cases, a minority of the community that engage, particularly with submissions. So you can say you can get the feedback, but you're really never hearing from the vast majority of the community, which is probably impossible to actually do. So I just come back to, it's actually for me about the role of the EMs and what is the desire of this council to be most effective and functional. And I do take that to heart. And some of the things I've heard of is, you know, the skill of people that we'd like to see standing, the diverseness of people we'd like to see standing, the time commitment that people really need to have to stand, and there'll be a bunch of others, but there are 3 fundamentals for me. The additional remuneration, the 15,000, I really don't believe it's neither here nor there in terms of the people that we need to attract to this chamber. For me, it's to attain those things of having the best people around this table that can meet some of those things I just talked about, you know, the skills, the time commitment, is really going into a really good marketing campaign, and that's what I'll call it, whether that's the right words or not. A good marketing campaign kicking off at the start of next year or towards the end of this year, but leading into the elections next year, of these are the sort of people, or these are the sort of skill sets and time commitments that you need to have to stand for this position to be really effective. These are the sort of things that we will help you with. You know, we will give a good induction to make it nice and public. We will put you on a speed reading course, which none of us have done. you know, effectively. So you're sort of trying to really explain what these roles are actually about. So more than how many people sit around the table, it's for me, the type of people we want around the table. So therefore, I can't really support this because of my personal belief. It's not about, I mean, so for me, I don't meet my own criteria. So for me, I don't stand because I totally understand the intent of what is required moving forward. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you. Right. Roger, you had your hand up?
Yes, thank you. I'm not on mute, no. And it's really a question. We're having this meeting in July. We've got a couple of our councillors who are away, who've already expressed an opinion, and both of those would like to see more time in community consultation before any decision is actually made. Why is the timing of this meeting so essential? And it's probably to do with some form of program to enable it to be legally put in place for the next election. So if the decision wasn't made at this meeting, then that opportunity is lost. Is that correct?
Go to Stephen.
Roger Stevens going to have a go at that one.
Yeah, this process is governed by a statutory timeframe that's set down in the Local Electoral Act 2001, and the latest date by which a council can adopt its initial proposal is the 31st of July. So that is a hard date, and it must be adopted by that point. If a council was, again, if a council that had to undertake a representation review, if it didn't meet that timeframe, it would be referred to the Minister of Local Government as an order in council, which is probably not something that most councils, you're not in that position because this is a discretionary decision to go ahead with a representation review. But if you choose to do the representation review, the initial proposal must be notified, must be taken by the 31st of July, and that triggers a series of steps. And yes, it is designed to ensure that everything is lined up to meet the process for the 2025 electoral cycle.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly, Mike.
Yeah, sorry, just off the back of my other comment, I was looking at my notes. One of the fundamental positions of an elected member is to actually make effective governance decisions. And that's another real skill set. It's not the numbers. Effectively, it's about making good decisions for our community. That is our ultimate role. That is actually our ultimate role, to give guidance to the staff, to affect what the staff bring to us and to make the best decisions for our community.
Thank you, Mike. Monty, sorry.
Right. So look, my position on this, I've found this quite a difficult consideration, to be honest. I can see arguments both ways. I think the structure we've got currently is reasonable. Okay, it doesn't fall outside the bounds of reasonableness for me, but I'm always keen to look at anything which would improve the performance of this table. Okay, and so, Mayor Susan, you've actually convinced me today. I'm going to support you on this. That current structure is reasonable. This proposal is also reasonable, and it could be an improvement. Okay, it could lead to more engaged and more accountable decision makers, a smaller group who are more actively participating. Because I do think that the current table is reasonably large. If everyone says what they think for 2 minutes on any given topic, you're at an hour basically. So it tends to mean that not everyone's fully engaged in everything. So. Yeah, I'm happy to keep this proposal alive, to take it to the next stage of public consultation, which will be hopefully a bit more fulsome than what's happened, with the view to an ultimate decision happening later, because this could be an improvement, and I would like our population, our public, to have a say on it. So that's me. I'm with you. Okay.
Thank you, Monty. Liz, do you want to say something? Do you want to, have you any comment? No, not with us. Okay, and Dale Marie, you. Just-
Yeah, kia ora
Thank you.
tātou. I looked at the document quite a bit over the last couple of days, and honestly being led by feedback that I've heard constantly from places like the Enhanced Plan, where we've had people come to us and yell at us and tell us that we need to possibly look at ways to curb costs, whatever. And not that I've agreed with some of the ways that people have told us, you know, are we top heavy in certain ways? Because I've also heard, you know, from the community as well, that they don't want to see us spending more money on doing this process as well. But on the back of hearing so much and seeing so much as well from communities, particularly who aren't Māori constituents, but looking at the wider community, as I take on the feedback that they would like to have a bit more of a say. So, you know, as someone who sits in a position who's possibly going to, you know, who's really challenged with the seat, that I've just found out that would have its third reading today, the act that can essentially disable the voice of my communities. I'm going to support the Mayor, and I'm going to support that we go out to our communities and listen to what they say, albeit this will cost us. I think we need to hear from them, because there is currently a climate where many of them feel that they're not being listened to either. So, yeah, I'm going to support the Mayor on this one. Tēnā tātou.
Thanks, Dale Marie. Liz, are you with us now? Would you
Yeah,
like to say something?
yeah, Bruce, thank you. I'm just presuming you can hear me okay. Look, again, it's a very, very difficult decision, but I'm happy to let this progress to the next step, to hear from our community. Look, I probably, everyone who's spoken today, the concerns, the issues, they're all real, and I almost agree with them all. But I do feel this is an opportunity to hear from our community, and if we take some of the other comments on board, if we can do a really good, you know, some great communication to get some more ratepayer investment into joining this conversation, because it's a really important conversation to have around, you know, how we represent our ratepayers. So yeah, if we can do a great comms piece, I'm sure, Lisa, that's very possible. Let's get people talking about what they want for our next election. So happy to let this go out to the community. Thanks.
Thanks, Liz. Marcus? Sorry, Nini.
Yeah, I'm happy to support as well, but I fail to see how this is going to cost 7,000 to do it, because I think this is one of those times that we do need to actively engage with our communities of interest and everybody, and maybe do some town hall meetings and bits and pieces to tell people what this means and why why we're doing this, because we're doing it to you know, to be a better functioning team, we want to get more people engaged with council and things, and we really need to hit that hard. And I'm just worried that the budget is not appropriate, really.
Susan?
Yeah, hey, look, thanks for everybody sharing their thoughts on this one. There's certainly no silver bullet, we know that. But I just thought maybe just add a little bit of context around this too. Just as an aside, I'm part of an LGNZ electoral law reform working group, and I was actually in Wellington on Wednesday. This piece of work is being led by Mayor Nick Smith of Nelson. It's sort of almost his life work. He's really passionate about the area, and one of the nubs of the things we're trying to demystify and redress is poor voter turnout and unpack and understand why and what we can do in terms of a sector to try and reverse that trend, if you like. A lot of it sits around postal voting. Post is dead. A lot of it sits around the failure for people to actually know candidates, know what local government does. Like, it's a very complex sort of web, if you like, of reasons that produce a really low turnout. So there is work being done at an LGNZ level. We will be bringing a paper back to the sector in due course with our findings. So there is sort of work being done at that level. So I just thought I'd dial you in on that one. And the second thing is whether we go with this or not today, it's always been my intention, and I think it's something that we've all agreed at the beginning of this training, to try and do more work as a team, to work better as a team. And to that end, I have made inquiries through staff to look at what PD there could be available for us. And that's not periodic detention, that's professional development. So that we can perform better as a group, irrespective of the numbers, right, and who we are. So it's not, this isn't a one-hit wonder and everything, all eggs in this basket. This is part of a bigger piece of us doing better, not just in Waipa, but as a sector, I suppose. And there is work on a lot of levels in that place. So yeah, that's sort of the context within which I guess I wanted to place the discussion today. So yeah, cheers.
Thank you, Susan. I've just got one thing. So I was a bit like Monty. I was with the rural and being a rural councillor, I was dead against the setup, but I've changed. So that's, I suppose, good for one side. Maybe it's not good for the other. But my concern now, and I'll throw over to you, Lisa, is how do we get people more engaged? So we get some more better feedback. So.
Sure, thank you. And through the chair, just to offer a level of comfort over the pre-engagement, while we only received 59 submissions, we actually reached over 27,000 on Facebook, which resulted in 1,464 clicks through to the website. So people were aware of what's happening. They've clicked on to find out more. They've just decided not to engage further in the process. We also did some full page ads in both the Cambridge and Te Awamutu News and pushed it out through Anteno, which again reached another 10,000 people with 1,000 clicks through to the website. So people were aware of what was happening. They just weren't taking it through to the full feedback process. We'll be looking at following a similar vein this time. I've recently realigned my team to put a stronger focus on engagement, and we've been waiting for the decision today to see what that engagement may look like further into the community.
Thank you, Lisa. Has anyone else, Phil, you've got any comments? No. Does anyone else want to say anything? Or Phil, or go back to Steve.
One final for me, being a rural ward councillor too, I've been struggling with this communities of interest issue. And I've publicly said here before, I do think there is slightly different communities of interest between people who associate with Cambridge and people who associate with Te Awamutu. But if you've got one rural ward with two councillors, I think that there'll be a de facto kind of east and west anyway. That'll be what tends to happen. Doesn't have to, but so I've kind of in my head reconciled it on that line. So I've got a bit of comfort there.
You think, Monty? Roger, could I then to you, Claire? Roger?
Yeah, thank you. And it was the fact that Mayor Susan referred to the paper that I'd submitted. Can I ask whether that paper, as I'd requested, be tabled as part of the meeting or not?
No, it hasn't come up, Roger. Is that, Ken, can I add?
Yeah, look, so through the chair, so Roger, you did copy that paper, or my understanding is you sent that paper to all elected members, so all elected members have seen it. Yeah, procedurally, I think there's a bit we'd have to work through to actually table those comments. But yeah, look, I think you can rest assured that all members have seen that, and in fact, a number of the items that you mentioned in that paper, I've noticed have been a part of the discussion today anyway. Yeah, that'd be my advice. We don't formally table that paper.
Yes, Roger, I think everyone's seen it. So yes, thank you for that. It's a lot of work put in. Claire?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that I acknowledge the work that's been put in and the leadership that Mayor Susan's showing. It is a really difficult decision for me as well, but I have been swayed by the comments that have been made, especially from the other rural councillors, and also having a close look at the comments that Lisa made about the actual pre-engagement. There was a reasonable good response from the rural ward I suppose, residents, and there actually was a bit of a mix there, for and against, pretty even. So I think it would be useful to consult on it so that we get a clearer picture. And I do support the work to sort of have a look at the roles that councillors do play and make more use of professional development and things like that, so that we've got to focus on, improving performance and stuff like that. Yeah. So great discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephen, would you like to have any final say or?
I don't think I've got
conclusion?
anything
No.
further to add. I think that the proposal is there in front of you, and yeah, happy for you to.
Right, I think we've come to that time now. So I'll put the recommendation in without reading every word of it, which we've all read. It's A, B, C, D, and E. All those in favour, could you please hold your hand up, because we've got to get this recorded properly, and leave it up until Debbie gets it. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
You've got Liz, Susan, Marcus, Marie, Mike, Monty, and Claire, and I'm for it too. Did you get Susan? You right with that? Happy?
Yes, yeah. And you heard Liz's voice?
Sorry.
Liz's voice, so she's.
Just me. You're right. You're happy with numbers? Yep. Okay. Contrary, against?
Yes, yes, and me.
I'm Philip, Roger.
Richard. All happy? So I think on those numbers, the recommendation is carried. So thank you everyone. You don't need to say all favour. We just had a vote on it. So the motion is carried. Thank you. Right, and that we have Dale Marie. I don't think there's any other business. Could you do a closing karakia, please?
Kia ora tātou. I mua I te...
Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry, Tangri.
Sorry. But,
Did we have a mover and is?
oh, that's... Okay, Mayor Susan's moved. I'll second it from the chair.
And then we've all voted.
They've all voted, sorry. Minor technical, this is, I've got Diana around.
A little bit of a rookie.
Yeah. Yeah, saved. We're back here tomorrow. Sorry, Dale.
Ka wai I mua I tā tātou whakakapi. Tēnā koe Liz, koro tahi ko Roger I runga I te ipurangi. Koutou rā, I noho ana I mua I a mātou. Tēnā koe Stephen I taima I tēnei rangi mō tō mahi nui I mua I a mātou. Kona kaimahi o te kaunihira tēnā tātou o koutou mahi nunui I a rā, I a wiki, I a marama, I a tau. Unuhia ki te uru tapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te nākau, te tinana, te wairua. Koiara, ka whakairia ki runga, kia tina, haumie, huie, tai ki e. Recognising everybody today, have a beautiful day. Tēnā tātou.
Thank you, everyone.